Well, welcome to today's episode of Lockbox Lunatics. I'm Chad Kamp out of Chandler, Arizona, exit Realty Coannah, with my trusted cohort, Steve Lambert, out of the Washington area. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello. We have a special guest with us today, Angela Fox. She is a subject matter expert when it comes to youth behavioral health, right? And she is a team lead. Let's see, it's a team lead behavioral youth treatment there in Kentucky. It's so long, I've got to write it down. I went to Chandler High School, so you guys will forgive me, right? But she's also made several appearances on the local news out of Cincinnati. I think stations, was it 19.5? She recently was on the Tom Brennaman podcast, talking a little bit about behavioral health. So she's getting around the circuit. So I'm glad that your publicist was able to reach out to us and then schedule this for you, that we made availability for you on such an important topic, right?
Yes,
All
exactly.
right.
Thank
And
you.
really quick, just give us a quick background on what you do there in the Kentucky area, and then we can kind of get into how this relates to real estate.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. Basically, what I do is I oversee 8 northern Kentucky school districts and 43 clinicians that are placed in those 8 school districts. They go into the buildings, into the schools. They have caseloads of kiddos that they provide therapy services for mental health. And currently we have 63 schools that we cover.
Wow.
And then I also have my own caseload of my own kiddos with mental health disorders.
Okay. Yeah. So in this day and age, one of the topics, that we like to cover as broker, Steve and I, and the brokerage is just basically how to effectively communicate, how to have difficult conversations. And so, whenever the opportunity presented itself to be able to have you on, we just thought what better way to start talking about how to have conversations and kind of the impact, social impact for agents with their clients. So, thanks again for taking time out of your day. I know Steve was just talking. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Steve, what you were kind of talking about just before we came on board here.
Well, yeah, we were kind of talking a little bit about those difficult conversations that we have. And I think real estate, we see a lot of things on TV, right? Show me 3 houses, I buy a house, $1 million listing and all this. And you see all this glamorous side of it and everything's fun and happy. And then they kind of show you some of the real estate drama in the background between agents. But where the drama can really happen and the difficult things can happen is actually between us and our clients. We work with people for a finite amount of time, and we're in a very emotionally charged situation because home purchases are it's the biggest spend that most people ever make in their life. There's a lot of money at stake. And I've noticed that in the past few years, and even more so this year, that conversations between agents and clients, they're coming to me more and more often saying, like, I don't know how to have this conversation. And we're talking about those difficult conversations. And so just kind of trying to pinpoint that and better understand maybe why that breakdown in communication is happening, and maybe why we're seeing that across, not just obviously in our industry, but maybe across, society, other businesses. We hear these things from other business owners as well, managers, team leads, and things like that. And so would love, Angela, to hear a little bit of kind of maybe your thought process on if that's something that you're seeing like in the bigger picture, and maybe some of the underlying reasons and things that we can do to maybe work towards creating a more cohesive, conversational path, I guess.
I think that you're exactly right. And it's not just, one area of expertise. It's not one field. And the reason why is because it's universal. We took an entire generation and we made them guinea pigs to a live experiment, and it's called cell phones. And essentially they have the universe at their fingertip, for anything. And it's the problem that it causes with that age group is that their brain is porous and it absorbs stuff much like an addict. Okay. And so they fall quicker, harder, and it's harder to quit. The problem that we're seeing because of that is anxiety has escalated, mental health in general, depression, suicidal ideation, self-harming. All of those things have escalated. And so what we're seeing is because those things are escalated and they don't know how to communicate, they don't know how to take risks, they don't know how to problem solve, they don't know how to decide between this relationship's not working for me, how should I change it? And so they're just not engaging.
That's interesting because I talk about that. I've mentioned like the social experiment. I agree on the phones 100%. I think that coupled with social media is like the perfect recipe for kind of a bit of a disaster. And I love the fact that you said as guinea pigs, because I really do think, I've joked, Chad and I have joked about it, and I've talked to several, friends about it as well, that the great social experiment called social media, right? Because we entered into this place where all of a sudden everything happened so fast. You knew exactly what everybody was doing, and everybody became an expert and was happy to share that opinion with you, whether you wanted it or not.
That's right.
And I think that I've seen, at least with some people, in their 20s and 30s, even, they're so concerned about what social media is thinking, or what somebody's going to say about them for a certain situation, that I think you're right. They get a little bit of paralysis almost. Is that
They do.
kind of what
They
you're
do.
alluding to?
Yep. And it's hard because during that period of time, they need their peer interaction. They need that communication, because it does teach them how to kind of do those things to train their brain to become healthy adults. They missed out on that. And
Right.
so Gen X, if that's what you want to go by, they don't know how to communicate. They're afraid. They're afraid of what everybody's thinking. They're afraid of how they perceive them. And in reality, we know that's not true, but that's really how they're so escalated in mental health, is because that's what they believe truly. And social media, unfortunately, has taught them that's true, unfortunately.
Well, I think everyone's so caught up in living in a fantasy world, right? Where there's
Yes.
a utopia out there that it actually exists, or that it should exist. And individuals, or at least from what we're seeing, when Steve and I were growing up, as well as you, Ange, you had to get out and you had to have conversations. You had to share
That's
your
right.
opinions. You had to share your feelings, right? Or you were just going to get trampled on, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I think, from what I can envision here, is, at least the cause for it, is they're so used to being tied to a screen and being able to text, and especially now with AI being able to correct anything, and to give ideas, people
Mhm.
are having a difficult time learning how to speak for themselves and to speak
That's
up.
right.
So then that translates from a real estate spectrum, in the real estate world, is, agents are going to have a difficult time just relating and talking to their clients. They're going to have a difficult time, having some sort of negotiations with the other side, right? And so if we have a society full of agents that are always used to getting their way and always
Yes.
being talked to a certain manner, and then whenever they come to this realization that, look, hey, that seller doesn't want to give us this concession, that, or that buyer doesn't want to pay me X amount of dollars, how do I convey that to my client, to be able to further and start working towards a resolution, right? And I think that one of the things that is contributing to that is that lack of interaction that today's youth, is seeing. The millennials really is where I believe it probably started, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do believe that that's kind of where we saw it start. And if you look at the time period, it was between the 2010 to 2015, which is right after the smartphone came out in 2007 or 8, somewhere in there. And then as the ages stair-stepped, right? The depression and mental health actually declined. So we knew that it was connected to that particular age group. So, when we talk about our population, our age group, being able to communicate and problem solve and look at those social cues and take risks, healthy risks in safe environments. That's what it is. They didn't learn that. And so those kiddos that are now growing up, I mean, think about it when you go through a drive-through and they're taking your order, right? Think about when you're in a restaurant, and just happened to me the other day, and I was like, can you make it warm and fuzzy somehow? It was like, can I help you? Okay. Back in our day, it was like, is there anything else I can do for you? Thank you so much. Your total is, you don't get that anymore because they're anxious.
Right.
It's
And
interesting that you point that out there too, because we talked about, Chad mentioned that utopia, and I think that's that fallacy that's created with social media, where you see, I mean, I've joked about it so many times before. I see somebody, a couple I know or I loosely know, and it's all these, we're love each other, we're on all these trips and everything else. 2 months, it's totally quiet. 2 months later, we're divorced, right? And it's
Yes.
like, whoa, it didn't see that coming from the way that it was presented in this beautiful shiny package, right? And it's something we find in real estate too. You were talking about generationally. We have, the average age of realtors is 53, 56 years old, somewhere in there. And you see that in other industries where HR or hiring managers are saying, we actually want to get like some of the older folks back into the office because they understand how to communicate and
Absolutely.
work through things. And that's always been something where that's kind of a shift, right? It's really interesting. Before, you wanted that young, energetic, fresh out of school person that was ready to just go get it and kind of go after it. And now that seems to be a little bit more of the apathetic person coming out. So the change has been really dramatic. What are some things that you think we like for our industry specific? I'll get a little bit more selfish on that side of it and just say more industry specific, I guess. If you were in our shoes and you had agents that are in that 30 something, late 20s to late 30s that are still having some issues communicating, what are some things that you're finding success with to help people better understand how to let that go and start communicating?
I think that it's really important, one, to say, put the electronic devices down. I know that's easier said than done. And, I'll be the first to say that they do provide us, some great tools and successful things, right? But at the end of the day, it's becoming their identity. And so that's the easiest. It's the hardest and the easiest, kind of a double-edged sword, but you got to put the device down. When you have time to hang around friends and people that you love, put the devices down and actually engage. You will be able to start kind of shifting. Our brains work that way. We want to change those neural pathways. It just takes a consistency in doing the things that will help. So putting the phones down, that's the easiest. I know the hardest at the same time. But the other thing is doing things that you love that don't require having a phone in your hand. Get outside, exercise, go out and hang out with people that you enjoy hanging out with. Doing puzzles, even anything that exercises your brain is going to change your neural pathways. What I like to in our industry, we like to say coping skills, right? I kind of hate the word, but love it at the same time. But we've kind of adopted this thing that a coping skill is unanimous or universal for everybody across all fields and all professions, right? And that's just simply not the case. If you look at it from a realtor's perspective, what's your toolbox? What's in your toolbox? You don't take fishing tackle and worms and things like that, right? That's exactly right, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that you create this toolbox for yourself, and what works for you. And so it really has to be dialed into the individual, not the circumstance. So, for me, I'll put myself out there. I love to cook. I love to hike. I love hanging out with friends. Those things are what take my attention away from the electronics and get me exercising my brain to do different things. And some of that is risk taking. You need to be able to take healthy risks.
Oh, I love that, because we're a very stressful environment with what we do. So I think, like you said, these are all things that are just healthy living, really, right?
That's right.
And we want them to put the phone down after they watch the podcast.
That's right.
That's right. Yes.
I said it yesterday. I was like, I'm part of the problem here. But the reality is, you're also talking about direct connection and indirect. So really, the podcast is indirect because we're not touching it. It's not in our hands. So it's not going to affect us that much.
Thanks for that level of clarity there, Ange. Contributing to the collapse of society.
Right. Add it.
You are part.
Well, I might be, but you two may not. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So I think it's very important. I think you made some good points. Is because when we have our meetings, and I'll be honest, I fall prey to this as well. During this podcast, noticed my phone went off, and it's such a strong urge to grab it to see who's texting me, especially from a business perspective, right? Steve, you know how that is. The longer it takes you to respond to something, you may or may not miss out on business, right?
Right.
And so that's been so ingrained in us as agents as well. It's very extremely difficult for me to disconnect. I know, Tammy, my wife and I, we went on a cruise for our anniversary this year. And before we could leave the boat, when we were docked, I had to jump on the phone and get on the computer and get some work done. Now she's been gracious, and she understands that, and I got to pay for the cruise to begin with, right? So she understands that. Yeah, and so it's extremely difficult, especially when you're in our business. So I think it's very important, even when we sit down and have, like, say, team meetings in the office. I know Steve holds meetings, I hold meetings, to be able to set that phone, set it aside, and say, hey, look, anything that comes in can wait an hour, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's some great advice as well. How are we on time there, Mr. Lambert? I know you're the timekeeper today.
Oh, we're in good shape there. We're in good shape. I have Chad, you just brought up something that's awesome, and I'd love to hear Angela's take on this. So
I have a tendency to do that, by the way.
yeah, he has good idea. Yeah, he has good. Yeah, we like
once in a while.
I have
it's
great
fun.
ideas. I just don't know it.
I just don't know it. The interesting thing is you said, like, when the phone goes off, right? That fear of us saying, oh gosh, I'm going to miss that client. I'm going to miss that client. That client's going to go away. And then the second half of that, the backside, I always try and take that statement and flip it around and say, well, if the client's going to go away that easy, is that a client I want, right?
Yes.
So then I try and flip it. But I think Angela probably has a pretty good answer on this one. Is this largely a fallacy of marketing that has been pushed towards us to say, if you don't do this, you're going to lose out? So it's a fear-based marketing strategy, right? Like, coming from a place of scarcity. If you're not on this thing 24/7, you're going to miss out on all the things that you want to achieve, whatever that may be. And is that something, because that when Chad said that, I was like, gosh, you see that in marketing, and that's drilled in our heads. If you don't answer that lead within 5 seconds, man, 5 other people are on it and they're gone. And you
That's
just
right.
Well, what do they say? They say that if you respond within the first 90 seconds, you've got a 350% chance of converting that to a client.
yeah. And after 3 minutes, it's like 10% or something. You just you just lost everything.
Right. And
so back in the marketing people, you've got some pretty smart people, eh?
Yes.
They knew where to start. So yeah, you're exactly right. We call it survival. We're creatures of survival, right? Whatever we need to do to survive, we're going to do that. Without getting too technical, we have an amygdala right in the center of our brain, and we're taught that whatever it takes to survive, that's what you do. So if something sets off that amygdala and it starts pulsating, saying, get it, you got to get it now, you're going to lose it, you're going to do it. And whenever you consistently do that over time, you've told your brain, yes, I need to do this for survival. So yeah, the people that were doing marketing, they knew what they were doing, right? Because all of us are sitting here going, oh, I need this, oh, I need that. I mean, look at the TikTok, for Pete's sake, Instagram, all the things that they're promoting. People don't need this stuff, but they think they do, right? I can't do without, I don't know, a lipstick because that color is the right shade, right? It's not true, but yes, they have marketed that for so long that we have now believed that we do need these things, and we do have to jump on it.
It's pretty wild, because you do think about that, and like you said, that whole idea of just being trained that that's what you need. And yet it's interesting, because as I've gone through my career and I've found that I can reach out to clients and tell them, hey, I actually have appointments and I have this and this, and why don't we talk here? And it's interesting, I found those clients have a stronger connection to me for long-term business, as well as respect the fact that I do have a schedule that I'm respecting, and that when they're a client of mine, that they can expect that I'll respect their schedule, right?
That's right.
And versus that kind of that overwhelming, just constantly just answering everything as fast as you can and getting onto it. Anyway, it's really fascinating to me. It's very interesting. Yes, the marketing people know how to especially in real estate, how to say, if you don't do this, you're going to lose out, right?
And that's an interesting point you make there, Steve, as well, because what I teach my agents is everything you put on your calendar is an appointment. Yep. I don't care if you're picking your kids up from school, going to their soccer game, because instead of revealing your personal life 100% to your client base, you reserve that for scheduling. And so whenever I respond to emails and phone calls, I try and schedule that as well. And then I know whenever I've got certain scenarios where I could have some issues pop up. For instance, I've got a closing that's going on Friday. So right now I'm on peak awareness. Okay, what's going to come up between now and Friday? So anytime I see the text come through, I think Angela makes a good point, is right now my brain is programmed, make sure that it has nothing to do with that closing. You have to jump on that and put a fire out, because Steve, fires, they come in at the last minute. And and the sooner you can jump on this. Yeah, but it's having that mental awareness of knowing when to curtail that desire and when to, okay, look, from a survival perspective, this closing needs to happen for my clients, right?
Yeah.
So
One, it's been a big year with something we run into, Angela, as well, is buyer fear this year, right? Buyers are very fearful because interest rates and this and that. And there's been a lot of ghosting going on. They'll have you show them some houses. They're all excited. Then they just disappear. But then they'll come back 2 or 3 months later. And it's been a very dynamic year, I guess, is the word I'll use for that this year. And so I think we're feeling that across a lot of different fronts. I love the takeaways you gave us. I guess what is the kind of, what would be your overarching message to help people kind of just outside of the 4 points you gave us? I guess just a quick summary on what do you think would be helpful to people to help bring that anxiety down and help communicate a little bit more clearly and feel less worried about it?
I think that that's a hard thing to peg when we talk about society as a whole. It is really personal. It's a personal thing. You have to personalize it. But at the end of the day, it's about boundary setting. Setting those small boundaries. I love what Chad said about the schedule and appointments and things like that. Even in my field, I block out just block. It's just, I'll put a block on there. And that's left for those emergencies. So it's about putting boundaries. Boundaries are not for the other person, they're for you. And definitely putting the line in the sand about saying, I'm not going to cross this because it's not healthy for me. So, when we're talking about scheduling, like Chad mentioned, that means putting a block to allow that safety space of saying, you know what, I want to make sure I have room to not overextend myself or to not, overpromise and underperform or do whatever the case may be, because those things are going to exacerbate that anxiety and that depression and those things. So definitely boundary setting. And then getting out and doing those things that you have to do to stay mentally healthy. That means getting your sleep, getting your exercise, drinking and eating healthy, and then engaging with those people that you love on a real personal level without added support and help.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So I think we're about time to wrap up.
Yeah.
Timekeeper there. So just real quick question, Ange. I just want to know, you've been on all these TV shows. You've been on Tom Brennaman, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So when are you booked on WKRP?
WKRP.
When can we listen to you on WKRP?
It's coming.
Okay. All right. Have your publicist work on that. And we've got Thanksgiving coming up. Maybe you can be on for the turkey drop.
There you go. That's what we need. Yes.
I love it. I love it.
All right, Angela, hey, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on and talk a little bit about some behavioral issues and things that we're facing in the real estate world, as well as, just from a societal perspective. So thanks for watching as well, those that are on board. Please like and comment and also share. And as always, if you have any specific topics that you would like us to cover, go ahead and include those in the comments. So again, thanks everyone for your time. We'll talk to you later and take care.
Thank you so much. Take care.